crazy for me to say, but just a little over a week ago, I was in Israel. Even crazier for me to say is that just over 2 weeks ago, I was in Poland. I participated in the 2013 March of the Living program, which of course for me was a life-changing experience. Everything from the people I met on the trip down to the experiences and knowledge that I gained, it truly is an incredible program. I'd like to go into a little further detail. On our Toronto contingent, there were over 200 people traveling with us. 11 of those people were survivors of the Holocaust. 11 of those people changed my life forever. I'd like to talk about one specific person that I met that really had an impact on me, Susan Pasternak. Prior to the trip, I had never met her, but now that I have, I will never forget her. On the trip, the survivors came with you to the sites, tours, and activities that the program has planned. They often float around the crowds, allowing for people to introduce themselves and have a little chat. This is how I first met Susan. This particularly solemn day of the trip had a bright light hidden within. This was the day we visited Auschwitz. After seeing something so horrific, I was quite beside myself. But later that evening, when we were sitting down to dinner at the hotel, I decided I wanted to get to know the survivors. It was already a few days into the trip, and I hadn't really spoken to any of them too much. As I was getting food, I noticed I was next to one of the survivors. I asked her if she'd like to have dinner with me, and she said yes. From there, we got to talking, discussing things that we had saw that day in the camp, how we were feeling, and so far our experiences throughout Poland. She had given me many different ways of viewing every situation, and gave an interesting insight into many different topics that we discussed. Then we started talking about the regular schmoozing topics, such as where I attend school and synagogue, and of course some Jewish geography. This is the first of many times I had dinner with Susan. The next week in Israel, she became somewhat of a trip grandmother to me. I would often walk with her whenever I saw her at activities, ask her about how her day was going, etc. Over the 2 weeks, our friendship continued to grow. I will never forget the way that she opened up to me immediately, and the warm way she welcomed me into her life, so quickly and seamlessly. She has taught me to be kind, welcoming to new people, because you never know where you will find a friend. The next topic I'd like to discuss was my experience at Majdanek, a concentration camp in Poland. This was the last site we saw in Poland on the final day of the first week. Prior to this day, I was not aware of this camp's existence. Before the trip, I was not as knowledgeable of the Holocaust as I am now, but I was still considerably versed. Even still, I had never heard of Majdanek. When we visited Treblinka, Auschwitz, and Birkenau, the feeling was very real. I was able to feel the presence of all those who had perished on the soil I was standing on, but nothing compared to Majdanek. The other camps were isolated in the middle of forests or a walk away from a small village, not Majdanek. It was situated right next to Lublin, with houses surrounding the huge compound's grounds. The other camps had exhibits similar to a museum, such as victims' shoes, separated from the public by a glass wall, not Majdanek. They had a room filled with shoes, but not separated by glass. You could smell the musk of the leather, worn out over time. You could reach out and touch them. This was all too real for me. It was a very overwhelming feeling. I felt as though I was suffocating instantly when I walked into this barrack that was full of bunks that were all original, in the same way the prisoners had slept in them so many years ago. There was nothing museum-like about this place. There was no gift shop, no entrance gate, just original horrific pieces of history, untouched and untampered with. The hardest part of the whole day for me was visiting the memorial mausoleum dome that had been built just outside of the compound. This massive dome, maybe more than 40 meters in diameter, housed the ashes of all the Jews exterminated during the 1943 mass extermination that completed the liquidation of the Jewish population in Lublin. This was the most indescribable moment of the trip for me. I could not fit the right words to describe how I was feeling when I walked up the steps of the memorial to the top and saw the ashes just sitting there. I cannot begin to describe to you how emotionally moving this was for me. I was lucky enough to have friends with me there so that they were able to console me. Although this was the hardest thing for me to do on the trip, it was still the highlight. Participating in the march will always stay with me. All the experiences, knowledge that I gained, and all the people I met and the friends I made, all of it will be with me for the rest of my life. Thank you, and Shabbat Shalom.
I can honestly say that arriving in Israel has been one of the happiest moments of my life. From the second we landed to the second we left, a smile never left my face. Getting off the plane, I couldn't stop but think to myself, wow, I'm finally here, I'm finally in Israel. I had heard so much about it and had always been told by everyone that it's the best place on earth, and I couldn't believe that I was finally getting to experience it for myself. We got off the plane, made our way through customs, and got our luggage. We all quickly changed into shorts and t-shirts since we were finally so excited to be out of the cold that we experienced in Poland. Little did we know that it was freezing that morning and we all looked like a bunch of tourists in what we thought was appropriate clothing for their weather. We were all just too excited to even think about waiting another minute without changing since we were finally here. We walked through the beautiful airport. Glancing around, I didn't see one single face that wasn't ecstatic to finally be here. We made our way out of the terminal to our buses, and the second we saw Israeli ground, my friend Lauren and I couldn't stop but to get down on our knees and kiss it. We had all just gone through such a hard experience in Poland that the contrast from dark to light once we reached Israel was truly overwhelming, and I didn't know how to express my feelings in any other way for being so grateful that us Jews have Israel. Once we were on our buses, it was hard to keep our eyes open since we had been running on a little amount of sleep. I sat in my bus holding my eyes open from shutting just so I could get a look at Israel. I didn't want to sleep because I didn't want to miss a single thing that was outside of my window. Israel is truly beautiful. At many times during this trip, I thought to myself, I can't believe this is real. It all just looks like one giant, gorgeous painting. From our buses, we made our way to an army base. We had a delicious breakfast with IDF soldiers and got a quick tour of the base. I had never met such gentlemen in my life. They are all so respectful and such strong people for defending our country, and I'm so proud that we have such a strong army to stand up for us. The second we landed, I felt such safety, and after meeting these soldiers, I felt even safer. Not only did I feel a sense of safety, I also felt a sense of belonging. I felt as if I'd already been here before. It felt like home. I can now say that I agree with the people who told me that Israel is the greatest place on earth. I have never been somewhere so amazing. Everywhere you look is beautiful, the feeling of acceptance is extraordinary, and the fact that I got to spend it with the kids that I just went through such hardship with made my whole experience in Israel feel literally unreal. I cried when I left, I cried when I got home, and I'll probably cry again tonight because of how much I miss it. I hope to get married in Israel, and I hope to visit many times before that. If I knew Hebrew fluently, I would without a doubt join the IDF to protect our beautiful country. I cannot describe the feelings in words of what it feels like to be there. I can only try. I hope that you guys will go and witness it for yourself and feel the connection that I got to feel. Be proud to be Jewish and be proud of our land. I'm Yisrael. Thank you.
First, I would like to thank Ellie for giving me this chance to travel and go through what I experienced on this educational trip from Poland to Israel. I would also like to thank both my parents for allowing me to go and paying for me to go on the march. I got you. When we arrived at Balzix, an extermination camp the first week of Poland, it quickly became my most emotional part of the entire experience. I heard a testimony from one of the survivors on our bus named Anita. She had endured so much on her journey, and along the way there was one instant that stood out to me the most. Anita had said that her father's last words to her were the following: "Always remember who you are." While standing inside this place called Balzix, a place where 500,000 Jews were murdered, I began to cry. This was the first point on the trip where I let go of all of my thoughts and just showed my emotion because I knew it was normal. In addition to the very moving speeches we heard, we also flew out to Israel just after hearing a survivor named Fagi say some of the final words in Poland to us. She spoke beside a pile of ashes inside Majdanek, and that was the last place we all visited before going to the airport that evening. Going to Israel was exciting, and I was eager to start my journey on the second half of the march. My whole life I had heard the words Israel in song, in school, in shul, and now I was finally going to get to enjoy this wonderful place. This was a country I was proud to be a part of as a Jew. Over the years I would donate and give money to help the country, and now I was going to see it firsthand and explore the land of milk and honey with a handful of my friends as well as an expert tour guide. Overall, I loved the whole trip, and when we traveled to Israel, I enjoyed every moment of it. The people, the food, the culture, the whole area of land and people inside of it made me feel at home. I plan to return as soon as the chance presents.
I'd like to talk about the actual march, which we did between Auschwitz and Birkenau. The actual day of the march was probably the most beautiful day we had in Poland. It was sunny and almost warm, sort of. But that still didn't make the day any easier. It was, for me, probably the hardest day of the trip. When we walked into Auschwitz, we had been there on a tour the day before, but we walked in again and everyone was smiling and kind of excited for the march, and then we walk in and there's like this feeling you get, very heavy, and it's hard to explain, but it's kind of like you know that where you're standing, people were murdered, and it's really hard to feel that. So the Canada contingent walked in silence during the march, which I thought was really emotional. I walked arm in arm with 3 other girls from my bus, and we kind of supported each other throughout the march. It was really cool. At one point, we walked over a hill and just looked forward and saw everybody, because we were one of the last people at the line of the march. And I guess we kind of just felt proud to be there and to be able to say that we were marching with like 10,000 other Jewish kids from around the world. And we felt sad, but at the same time, like I said, proud. When we got to Birkenau, we looked around and the place was huge. I think during the ceremony, someone described it as being sort of like a post-apocalyptic sort of place, because it was empty and you just saw like chimneys, and it was very emotional. On a completely different side, there was the march in Jerusalem, which was a very different atmosphere. There were people dancing and singing and cheering and waving flags, and everyone was just really happy to be there and smiling. And when we walked from just outside the old city to the Kotel, and there was a short ceremony there as well. And then at the end, everybody stood up and we sang the Hatikva, and that was really amazing. Being able to feel the difference from when we also sang Hatikva at the ceremony in Poland, and then being in Jerusalem and singing it was amazing.
The March of the Living was truly an amazing experience, one of the most amazing experiences I've ever had in my life. So we started our trip off in Poland, where we did a variety of things, including visiting many different concentration camps and also extermination camps, such as Treblinka and Belzec and Auschwitz, Birkenau, and Majdanek. However, I'm going to speak specifically about Auschwitz, simply because this was the camp that made the most impact on me. I had spent so many years of my life learning about Auschwitz, more than any other camp that we visited, and education can only take you so far, in a way that finally going there created an entire different understanding of what actually went on there. You felt a much deeper connection to the events that actually occurred there, much more sympathy for all the people that experienced and were killed there. And going and seeing shoes in cages and hair that was cut off from people that were stripped of all their identity and treated like animals, it makes you feel awful. And I remember going around in Poland to all these camps and thinking how cold I was and how uncomfortable I was. But then you have an entirely new thought of how these people were here in the same time here, in the same weather, but they didn't have any food, any clothes, and you have and just those thoughts creates an entirely different understanding and a new appreciation for what you have. So then, going to Israel was a completely different experience. It was my first time in Israel, and I think the contrast from Poland and Israel really gives you a whole new appreciation of life and what we have today. It was really the first time on the trip where I didn't really think of all the different nations that were on the trip. We had learned that 40 different countries were on the trip, but in Israel, it wasn't about where you came from. It was how we're all united as Jews. There was no separation. And doing things like climbing Masada, and going to the Dead Sea, going to Sfat, going to Jerusalem, to the Kotel, all these things were things that I had wanted to do my entire life. And finally, to do them, especially after visiting Poland, was an amazing experience. So I remember reading in Auschwitz a quote that said, "If we do not remember history, we're bound to live through it again." And that's why I think, as Jews, it's not just our job to learn about what happened in the Holocaust, but also to educate others and spread the word so that no one forgets what happened in the Holocaust.